All right, I think we are going to go ahead and get started. I have a little bit of housekeeping that I have to get through before I hand things over to our speaker today. So thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate your time today. Like I said, a little bit of housekeeping. So before we start, I want to let everyone know, make sure everybody knows today's session is being recorded. So we are going to be redirecting you as well to a survey when you exit, when the session concludes. The recording, we are going to be sending out the recording to everyone. And if you are able to take that survey when you leave the session or when the session concludes, we really appreciate your feedback. Next item of business, I want to let you know if you're interested in seeing more presentations like this live and in person, we are sponsoring an academic center conference called the Academic Center Summit. Last year's summit, was amazing, and we had a lot of really great speakers. We had keynote speakers, Michael Frizzell and Corey Hammond, but lots of great breakout sessions as well. This year, our keynote speaker is going to be Sandra McGuire, and we are going to have a lot of great breakout sessions as well for that. Lots of networking opportunities. We also have a fun and unique excursion available. It's going to take place near our company's headquarters in Orlando, Florida, right on the campus, right on the University of Central Florida campus. I go to everyone's a little finicky sometimes. So basically, we have this exciting conference coming up. We'd love for you to join us right now. You can get a great early bird rate. Mark has just pasted the link in the chat to where you can find out more. If you're interested in presenting, we are taking applications for breakout sessions as well, proposals for that. So really excited. Last year's event, like I said, was really awesome, and I got to meet many of you in person, and hopefully we'll be able to do so again this October. It's going to be October 26th through the 28th. All right, so welcome to the latest webinar in our Engineerica Education Keynote series. We are very pleased to be bringing you this complimentary presentation and so excited to have you for the first webinar of 2025. So for those of you who are new to us, I just want to quickly mention that Engineerica specializes in academic center management solutions for higher education centers such as tutoring centers, advising, fitness centers, things like that. So you might be familiar with some of our software applications, including Academia and AccuCampus. And of course, I want to give a special welcome to any Engineerica clients joining us today. And for those of you who are not yet clients, I do want to let you know we are offering a complimentary trial of our most popular center management system, which is Academia. It's cloud-based. This gives you the opportunity to use it for an entire semester risk-free to see if it helps make management of your center and data collection easier. And if you're interested, you can send me an email at rachelc@engineerica.com, and I will paste that email in the chat in just a moment. So to the keynote series. Many of you have been to this series before. You might know that we started it for our clients and contacts who wanted to learn more about best practices and trends in higher education. So each month we feature a distinguished speaker to talk about hot topics in the academic support field, give you some additional professional development opportunities outside of what your institution may provide or what you may see at a conference. So we're still finalizing details for our next webinar, so keep an eye on your emails and our social media accounts, and we'll make an announcement when we open up registration for that. So a quick introduction to myself. I'm Rachel Cook. I'm a client success manager with Engineerica. I've been with the company for a while now, and prior to that, I was a learning center manager for 6 years at 2 different colleges. So like you all, I'm very passionate about higher education and student success. Getting to host this series is one of my favorite parts of my job. I do have with me as well my colleague Mark Kehoe, who is one of our technical support specialists and who has graciously joined us today to be my backup and to help with any technical issues that may come up. So I am pleased to introduce you to this month's speaker. Megan Burgundy is the manager of Academic Commons in the Division of Libraries and Academic Innovation. Megan has an MED from Marymount University and a bachelor's degree from the University of Pittsburgh. Prior to coming to GW, printed it out. She was the math learning specialist at the University of Maryland, College Park, and she has also worked as the math and student learning specialist at Marymount University in Arlington. So Megan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am going to go ahead and make you the new presenter, and the floor is yours.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to talk about, I relatively recently created, well, a few semesters ago, created a tutor observation rubric, and some of the key goals of that were to make it inclusive and useful. So I'm going to share that with you, and I hope it will help you as well. Okay, and I need to click, there we go. So some of the guiding principles was about making sure that it was inclusive, and I just like this quote from Bell Hooks that honesty and openness is always the foundation of insightful dialogue. And so that was something that was sort of guiding principle here. And for anyone who isn't familiar with the hidden curriculum, it was first described by Philip Jackson in 1968. And it was, you know, kind of the unspoken and implicit rules and values that students learn when attending school was sort of the how this this framework of how this hidden curriculum, like what it was used to describe. And I took that and was really talking about here the unstated promotion and enforcement of certain behavioral patterns and professional standards. And I wanted to make sure that the behavioral patterns and professional standards that we are looking for from our student employees and from our peer tutors were explicitly stated. So that is one of the main guiding principles of the development of this observation rubric that I'm going to share with you today. So first I have a couple discussion questions for you, and you can put those in that question section, like Rachel said earlier. Then I'm going to give you a chance to just do just a teeny tiny like mini rubric to create one for yourself. And I'm sorry, I'll walk you through my process that I use to create this rubric. Then after that, I will give you a chance to create just a little one yourself. And then I will show you my entire rubric, and we can point out a few key things that might be helpful, and also finally talk about any takeaways and action plans that you may have. So first with the discussion questions, so in the chat, what is one thing that you really like about your current observation form and process? And I'm always looking to incorporate other ideas here. So I love asking this question, and I can't wait to see what you say.
All right, and just a reminder, you can put that in the questions box. Awesome, I'm already seeing some responses. Diana says, it builds on the previous session with a particular student.
Oh, great.
I think people are thinking. Oh, here we go. It's clear and concise.
Oh, fantastic.
We look at all aspects very in depth. It's systemic, but ooh, they're going faster than I can keep up with. It's systemic, but also flexible. I like that.
Perfect. Yes, that is a good goal.
I'm seeing a lot of responses. I don't think we'll have time to read them all, but I'm seeing it emphasizes larger principles of tutoring covered in training, sets the tone or goal for the session, metacognitive and reflective. It's varied and flexible to fit any discipline, open-ended based on CRLA standards.
Fantastic. Many of those things you'll see in this one as well.
Yeah,
sorry.
Covers, oh no, you're fine. Covers strengths as well as areas for growth. We do have a clarifying question. Are you talking about a rubric tutors use with students or that supervisors use with tutors?
Oh, this is all about, the one that I'm talking about is supervisors for their tutors. Observing your tutors in a session and being able to give feedback to them about how they're doing.
And then I see the rubric I utilize has very clear expectations for students that they can meet in their own way. So some really great responses here.
All right, well, fantastic. So then the flip side to that would be, is there one thing that frustrates you about your current observation form or process? I know for me, one thing that I was frustrated with is I wanted to try to find a way to combine something that was a little bit open-ended, but then I found myself having to do a lot of explanation when I was meeting with the student employees afterwards about my thinking. So I wanted something that provided a little more clarity up front, which it sounds like some of you already have that, which is great.
Owen, Comfort, check your email. You got one from me. It's too in depth.
Oh.
There's not enough time to observe everyone. Feels too
Mm.
simple. We use a point system, and sometimes it's hard to decide what number we give them. Here's one that I sometimes struggled with as a tutor manager, struggling to give feedback to the experienced tutors who score highly every time. It's long, and I have 25 tutors to evaluate. They don't want to overwhelm tutors. Tutors see the rubric and think they're being graded and that there's very high stakes involved. I think that's especially true because for a lot of peer tutors, this is like their first job, and the norms are maybe not clear to them.
I have also had students ask me, did I pass? Like, of course, this is not a pass fail. This is merely a chance for feedback.
Here's one. This is not a frustrating, but an obstacle, is that I work with neurodivergent students, and they're very hesitant to be observed, even though we have explained that it's to evaluate the tutor, not them.
I have run into that too. I do ask students if it's okay if we observe first, and if those students would prefer us not to, then we do, try to find another one. But yeah, that can be a challenge if a lot of your students are in that situation and they don't want to be observed.
We have point system feels more punitive than encouraging and constructive. A bit challenging to match tutor schedules with observing faculty. With drop-in tutoring, we never know when or if a student will come. That makes sense.
That is true.
Some really good variation of responses here.
Excellent points. Some of those we will address. We might not be able to get to all of them, but we will address some of them. So one final quick question is, what is one thing that you already do to make your observation inclusive? And it sounds like some of these have come up already. For example, I'm hearing like, being very clear. That definitely is a huge thing. Asking students if it's okay if you observe them or observe the tutor, even though you're not really observing the student, but observing the tutor. That's definitely a fabulous inclusive practice. Are there any others that anyone would like to mention?
And while people are typing those, I do want to mention something that I didn't mention at the beginning. And if you're watching the recording later, you will get a copy of these things with the recording. But we have two handouts that are available in the handout section. You can download those. One of them is, I believe, the slides to today's presentation, and the other one is a form that you can download now, and that I believe Megan will be covering later. So I just want to mention that really quick. Okay, let's see. We've got some responses coming in. I give the tutors a self-evaluation that mirrors my evaluation form ahead of time so they can rate themselves.
Oh, fantastic.
Leaving room for multiple ways of engagement and execution of expectations. I explain that it's hard to improve. I have a strong relationship with my tutors. They're very honest about what they struggle with and what they are concerned about. When it comes to observations, which is great. That's a gift.
Yes.
That's lovely. I try to ask students for their feedback on tutors and ask tutors for their feedback before I meet with the higher ups. By having a follow-up discussion instead of rubric with points, there's more flexibility for different kinds of tutors, sessions, and students.
Yes, I do also, we use the rubric, and we also have a follow-up discussion, so it's nice to include that. All right. Well, all right, so I'm going to share a part of the rubric that I developed, and that is what is one of the handouts there, and you're welcome to download it and, take anything you like from it. But I'm going to go through a little bit about the process that I used and some of the things that worked well. So I have a couple guiding principles, a couple shout outs to, other people. This was a long process in the making, and I got, help from lots of different sources, and then I'll show you one of the portions of the rubric that we currently use. So a couple of the guiding principles, like we talked about before, really wanted to clearly outline expectations. And another thing that may or may not apply to your center is we also have multiple observers. And I found it difficult to have a consistent experience for the tutor across multiple observers. So this rubric really helped to minimize the subjectivity. Also, it had to be practical. We had to be able to have it up on a laptop. It was manageable to complete. I heard some of you said, earlier that that can be challenging. So it is a pageless Google Doc, and I'll show you that a little bit later. But it had to be kind of readily understandable, easy to complete during a 50-minute session. Also, I am of the opinion that if you cover in training, you should assess it. So I wanted to make sure every training topic that we covered was assessed in some way. Now, we don't assess every single part of every training topic that we covered, but every topic that we covered is on there. I also wanted to be able to evolve, and many of you said this before too, you like that about yours, that you can modify it, and so this is a structure that definitely can be modified. And then the final thing was I wanted it to be something that was useful for the tutors, just a friendly reminder of these things that we covered in training, as well as being useful for the observation. And a couple of my sources, I attended an assessment workshop at the University of Maryland, and and the athletics department trains students to be referees, and they created a rubric for evaluating whether or not the referees understood unsporting behavior well. And they used certain language on their proficiency levels that I just thought was fantastic. So I just borrowed it. So that's where that came from. We are also a CRLA certified learning center. So all of the topics and outcomes are just copied and pasted from the CRLA. And then there's a part where I have kind of more specific outcomes. Those, some of them are, ones that we created in-house or that I created, and others, I've definitely got a lot of information from various learning center professionals, and maybe even some of you who are here today that have shared through the listserv or things like that. And so some of those are also from there. So just shout outs to all of the contributors to this. So the first thing that I that I developed and where this started was, like I said, those levels of proficiency from the University of Maryland athletics department. And they were developing, approaching proficiency, accomplished, and advanced. So I started with those, and that is sort of, what it started to look like. The next thing is I wanted to have the topics and outcomes on here, and that was part of the, wanting this to serve as not only something useful as the observation, but also as a reference for my tutors and a friendly reminder. So I copied and pasted, the CRLA standards, tutoring do's and don'ts, and or the CRLA topic and its outcomes. And for the example here today, I chose tutoring do's and don'ts. So this is directly from the CRLA. All right, so then the next thing was I wanted to observe specific portions of this outcome because I knew that, time, there's no way that we could observe every single part of that. So the first I determined, what do we think are the most important pieces of the CRLA outcome? And then what are the behaviors that I want to observe that show that a tutor has mastered that outcome? So from makes effective decisions about what behaviors are acceptable and unacceptable relative to the tutoring session, I took that from the CRLA topic and outcome. And that was what I focused on for this particular topic. And so I just copied and pasted that right here. And then I went to decide, okay, what are the particular behaviors that I want to see? And so this is from our training. We have, for our tutoring do's and don'ts, we have an activity where they turn a tutoring don't into a tutoring do. So you can see our don'ts here. Hopefully tutors are never ever doing any of these in their session, but we ask our our students when they're in the training to turn them into a tutoring do. And these are just a handful. I think we have about 12 total. But I chose, for each of the topics on this rubric, I chose 2 or 3 behaviors. I tried to limit it to that so that it wouldn't be too overwhelming. And so for this one, I was looking at, let's see, the control of the session. For example, that's our tutoring don't right here. Don't yell, let me show you, and snatch the students' pencil, books, and laptops from them. So the behavior that we want to see is that the student is in control of the materials during the session rather than the tutor. And I also focused on this one, don't shout, Buzz, wrong, how on earth did you get that answer on such an easy question when your student makes a mistake? And so I put, response to appropriately to students' mistakes. So I just took pieces, but made sure that there was some of tutoring do's and don'ts that is being observed, since that is one of our training topics. And then we went to the specific behaviors to kind of fill in all those different proficiency levels. And I started kind of with, okay, accomplished, that's the second to highest. That's kind of like, this tutor is, a strong tutor. And that would be kind of my minimum expectation. And then I went to the other standards after setting that accomplished one first. And so for this tutoring do's and don'ts, you can see here, if a tutor is, pretty accomplished at this, the student is controlling the materials, maybe they take control slightly longer than's necessary, or maybe they, touched a laptop and forgot to ask permission, but they give the control right back to the student. So that was for the first one. And then for the second one, they should be reacting to students' mistakes with words of encouragement definitely in order to be an accomplished tutor. And so for this one, I did adjust it for, approaching proficiency. Maybe they don't readily relinquish it back, and then you can see it goes down from there. But it's a little bit different for responding appropriately to student mistakes. Even a tutor who's approaching proficiency, I felt still should be reacting to mistakes with words of encouragement. If they weren't doing that, I felt that they really, is more appropriate to be in this category. So it's not exactly the same for every topic, but it's a way to start to figure out, kind of what is the kind of minimum standard, and then adjust where you think if you observed something that a particular behavior where it would fit on this scale. All right, and finally, I wanted to have a place because I do like having some form of open-ended record, and where I can, just write down things that they say, or take other types of notes. So I added that into this column right here. And for that column, I have a place where I put strong technique for any things that I notice that the tutor is doing really well. And sometimes I'll just verbatim, type what they say. And then if there's something that I feel like, just there was a little bit of a missed opportunity, I have that column there as well. So for all of my outcomes in the notes part, I have a place for strong technique and missed opportunities. Okay, so that being said, I would love to give you a chance to create a rubric of your own, just for one training topic, and please include, levels of proficiency, the general topic and outcome to be expected, and what are the specific outcomes that you're hoping to observe in relation to that topic. So here, just as a friendly reminder, this is, what I have, and you are welcome to adjust this, or you can use this training topic or maybe another one. But I'll give you a few minutes to maybe choose a training topic and, create your own one little section of a rubric to see if you think this is something that might work for you. And there's a couple training topics at the bottom that you are welcome to use if that would be helpful. And then we'll give you a chance in a couple minutes after you do this, we'll give you a chance to actually observe some tutors. So yeah, and then if there are any questions, we can also be a good time to ask. We can take a little pause here and I can respond to any questions.
Megan, looks like we have a question. Did you want to take that now?
Sure, go ahead, yeah.
Okay, so Frank asks, how many topics are good to cover for one observation with a tutor?
So like I said, we do cover everything that we have trained. And so for the CRLA, we have 10 main topics. I think it's a total of 12. I'll show you in my, the observation that I form that we use, but I am definitely of the opinion that if you train it, you should assess it. Excellent question. It's a struggle because, yeah, then you have a very long observation form, which we do.
Annette is asking, do you observe more than once per year?
I try to do every semester. We do try to do, I have a, that's an excellent question too. I have a staff of about 35, I think, 30 tutors. Is it between 30 and 35? But I also do have graduates assistants who help. And so we do divide up the observations between the three of us. But yes, we do try to do once a semester. Minimally, I would do, once a year. Excellent question too.
Cheryl's asking, do you have more than one level 1 certification? And if so, how do you observe each level differently?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. The center that I'm working at currently is only level 1 certified, but I'm wondering, it's a really good top question if maybe you do have a completely different rubric for the level 2 because there are some categories, or do you just add on? Although that would be a very long observation rubric. Yeah, that is a really great question. But yes, right now we are certified at only level 1.
Do we have time for another question?
Sure, we can do one more and then we can move on.
Okay, so Kendra asks, do you observe the full tutoring appointment or just part of it?
Oh, that is also a very good question. We do observe the full tutoring appointment, and part of that is that in the CRLA standard of conducting a successful session, there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we do want to make sure that we cover the entire session. So yes, and now for the most part for us, our sessions are scheduled for 50 minutes. Some students do come and they have 1 or 2 questions and then leave after 30, and that is fine. We don't, it's not a requirement for us that the observation has to be a specific length, but we do observe for like 1 entire session. Now we do have the luxury that we are appointment based and not drop-in, and that we do have, a session limit of 50 minutes. I can imagine this might be a different type of observation that you might need to develop if you are working in something like a drop-in center where students stay for various lengths of time. It would have to be adjusted for that situation. Yeah, excellent question.
All right, and like Megan said, that was the last question we are going to take for this round, but if you have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the questions box. We will mark it and make sure we get to it at the end.
All right, well, fantastic. So I think, let me look at my screen. Oh, yeah, sorry, let me stop there. So now that hopefully you've had a chance to jot down some notes and a preliminary, section of your rubric. So we're gonna show you two sample tutoring sessions and see what you think about your rubric and were you able to use it well during these two quick tutoring sessions. So Rachel, would you mind showing the first one?
Hopefully this will work. 1 second.
Hi there. Hi, you must be Lindsay. I'm Jen, the nursing peer tutor. How are you today?
I'm okay. I'm definitely stressing out over my exam next Thursday.
Okay, we'll try not to stress too much. We still have 45 minutes today to do the session, so we have lots of time to go over everything. So here's the peer tutoring contract. Just read over it carefully, and at the bottom, just sign your name.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Okay. So it's great to see that you brought your textbook today. So what would you like to work on?
Well, I have my health assessment exam next Thursday, and I'm struggling with the abdominal assessment and the neurological assessment.
Okay, so let's start and look at one at a time. So tell me what you already know about the abdominal assessment. Seems like you know a lot already about the abdominal assessment. The only one thing I noticed is that the order for the abdominal assessment that you mentioned was inspection, palpation, percussion, and auscultation. That's the order for all the other ones, but you know why we wouldn't do that for the abdominal assessment?
Yeah, I mean, that is the order for all the other assessments, but what makes the abdominal assessment different? Well, if I complete palpation and percussion before using auscultation, the abdominal sounds will be disrupted if I'm palpating and percussioning. So I want to do inspection first, then auscultation, then percussion, then palpation.
That's great. You worked that out really well all by yourself, so that's really good. So we're nearing the end of the session today. We have about 5 minutes left. Do you have any last minute questions about the abdominal assessment?
No, I think I now have a good understanding of the abdominal assessment, but I think I'm still struggling with the neurological assessment. I feel like that's a really challenging, focused assessment.
Well, if you'd like, we can book another appointment for, I know your exam's on Thursday, so we can book one for Tuesday if you'd like, and it could be the same session, bring your notes, and then we can do something similar to what we did today. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's great. I'm actually free next Tuesday at 5 p.m. if that works for you.
Okay, sure. So we're just going to book it online. So
okay. Great.
Okay. And as I said, just make sure you bring your textbook and your notes, and we'll do pretty much the same thing as we did today.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. So good luck studying.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay. So see you next.
All right. Did you want me, Megan, did you want me to go ahead and play the next video?
So before that, so how I would love to have some feedback about how did your mini rubric work for this tutoring session? Were you able to capture, how the tutor was doing? Did you find it fit well? Were you, how did it work for this tutoring session? And please put that in the chat. Or this question, sorry.
Let's see. I'm seeing some folks say they couldn't hear the video or see the video. I know on
no.
Mark was able to see it. Like I said, if something was preventing you from seeing it. Sometimes the video playing could be wonky. Oh, Kim could hear it but not see it. Interesting.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
Oh, technology. It's great when it works.
Yeah, so I apologize. It wasn't working consistently for everybody. I do apologize for that. We will put it in, we will insert it into the video. Okay. Elizabeth says she was able to catch notes, then apply them to the rubric afterwards.
Oh, great.
Change the, they have to change the view. Oh, I think it opened in a new window. So if you were hearing it but not seeing it, and we do have another video to show, so just keep that in mind. If you hear and don't see it, it may be opening in a different window that you want to check there. Excuse me.
Okay, well, maybe we could try with our second video, and it's even shorter than this one. So let's give that one a try, because it's good to see how your rubric works with a couple ones, and maybe some of the technology issues will be worked out.
I'm seeing a couple more comments. The rubric was helpful for helping establish what I should observe about the session, showed that the tutor was skilled. The opening of the session plan / structure setup and the close to set up another appointment was nice. This would be meeting the things we would be looking for in the assessment. I chose active listening as a goal, and the tutor did well on that. I hadn't quite fleshed everything out, but I can see the definite connections.
Oh, fantastic.
Conducting a successful session, focusing on rapport building, goal setting. She scored advanced, summarizing at end and invite back.
Oh, fantastic. I'm nodding along. I know you can't see my head, but I'm nodding. And
no, we can see
great.
you now. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
It went back to your webcam. Okay. Kendra, that's a good question. I am going to mark that. We will get to that in a little bit. But Megan, are you okay with me showing the next video?
Sure, yeah.
All right. So that was, okay, so we're doing bad tutor habits now.
Yes.
All right. Here we go.
Hello.
Hi. What's your name? I'm Jenny. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, the pleasure's mine. I'm here to do a review on chemical bonding.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's first talk about some of the differences between ionic and covalent bonding. So ionic is between a metal and a nonmetal, and they take electrons from each other. Whereas with covalent, it's a metal or a nonmetal and another nonmetal, and they share electrons.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay, cool. So ionic would be, for instance, like sodium and chlorine, whereas something like hydrogen and chlorine would be covalent. Also, electronegativity is really important. The periodic trend on the table will tell you, like fluorine, for instance, is more electronegative, whereas something like cesium is not.
Yeah, I know all that. You know what? I have to go to class.
Okay.
I'm running late.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the help.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you.
Thank you.
That one was painful to watch.
It was. I hope this tutor does not work for any of you. But so just,
that was horrible.
I know it is, but it's
she
good.
Did a good job being bad though.
Yes, she did. I'm sure that is not her normal. So it's good also just to think about, like, just want to make sure that your rubric does capture all the different types of behaviors. So I wanted to show that as well. So if you have any comments about this for the chat, about was your rubric able to also give a, how do I say, would your rubric also be able to give helpful feedback to this tutor? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, as Laura pointed out, in the first video, the tutor let the student share where they were at. The second tutor just assumed what the student knew or didn't know. I like to evaluate tutors' concluding strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And this failed terribly. She had, it was too complicated.
Yes, the student pretty much walked away.
Yeah. Tutors should ideally end with a recommendation. Yes, very true, or a summary.
Yeah, so we're
Mhm.
catching a lot of things that you might have in your rubric that would apply toward the end of the session that would be particularly applicable to this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I added to my feedback and assessment a row under score of 1 that no assessment process is utilized.
Oh, that's great. Yes, it
That's
teaches
putting
you
it
like what
mildly.
you need
Yep.
to put in there.
Very true. The second tutor also didn't give the student time and space to contribute to the appointment, which is something we would want to address and document in the assessment. No intro or proper wrap up, no active listening, no goal setting as the student wasn't able to really articulate what they wanted help with. The tutor just ran off ahead.
All true.
Mhm.
Good. Well, and so just, it was good to think about, and hopefully your rubric was able to encapsulate both of those situations. All right, are there any more comments, or do you think can we move forward?
I am not seeing any more comments at this
All right.
time, but I think we got some really good ones.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so now I'll show you my whole rubric that we currently use, and just a couple notes about it. And if we can also talk about some of the implementation and some of our findings after using it for a couple semesters now. So I think I'm going to need to get here. So can you see the Academic Commons Peer Tutor Observation Form? Is that coming up for you?
Yeah,
or is
in
it?
your browser.
Yes, in my browser. Perfect. Okay, so if you have that in the handouts, it might be helpful to follow along because it's going to be hard for me to like show everything. It's quite lengthy, you'll see. But the tutor observation form, if you want to open that up and look at that as we go along here, that would probably be very helpful for you. So the first thing, and I love that when we talked about, when I asked the question in the beginning, many of you already do this, you have your tutors do a self-assessment. We don't have them do something like super in depth ahead of time, but as you can see here, when I show this to students, it kind of looks like this when they see it on my screen, and they can't really see any of the instructor's comments yet. And I do ask them these questions here at the top, some of the self-assessment questions. I ask them, what two tutoring skills do you feel used effectively during that session? Based on this session, is there a tutoring skill you're still developing? And how has your tutor evolved from either the beginning of the semester or since you've been working here? So I do ask them some self-assessment questions, and I do try to have this screen in a way so that they can't really see any of our comments yet. And we pretty much just type in what they say, right in here. When we have our meeting, this isn't our meeting after the observation. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit so you can see the comments that I put on the side as well as the entire observation. So give me just a second. I'm going to make that there. So hopefully you can see all of the topics and all of the categories. So one thing about this form that was really important to us was that it can be adjusted. So for example, for our CRLA topic of administrative policies and record keeping and reporting, we had an issue with students, or tutors, I should say, remembering to clock in and clock out. So since that happened to be just an issue with this particular group of tutors, I put that right on here. But that's something that in the future I might adjust because we might not need anymore. But at the time when we first started using this rubric, that was something that was really important to us, and I was spending a lot of time dealing with that. So I wanted to make sure they knew that that was something important that we were going to be checking up on. So the next thing here is what I did was I made a drop-down list in these categories that during the session I could really quickly select which category they kind of fell under. So this is a pageless Google Doc. And so I created a drop-down list. So wherever I felt that the tutor, where it most represented the tutor's behavior during that particular session, I could quickly and easily select it during the session. All right. So for the most part, it's one topic over here and then the specific outcomes, but there was one particular topic you can see here, conducting a successful session. I'm sure it sounds like many of you are familiar with this. I did break it up because they have kind of the beginning of the tutoring session, and now I'm going to scroll down. Sorry about your eyes, but here is the middle of the session. And then, of course, at the bottom, the end of the session. So that particular topic, I did break up into 3 different categories there, but that was so that we could kind of keep, the observation rubric in order to flow kind of with the session.
Megan, we have a quick question about the content you're showing. So I just,
sure.
Forgive me for interrupting. Amy asks, I missed what options are in the dropdown. It doesn't show up in the PDF, only NA shows.
Oh yeah, here, I'll turn a couple on. It's just NA or yes. So just so that I could easily show, which one they were. So I just did NA or yes. And the yes I made green just because I thought it looked nice. Like, yay, this is where you are. Good question, thank you. I'll highlight it on here so you can see it at least on the screen. Okay, so then we also, the other thing that was nice about this is for most of our tutors, we have a general rule that tutors are not permitted to work with students on anything that is going to be submitted for a grade. But we have one exception for that, our computer science tutors, and that is just due to the nature of the assignments. It's virtually impossible for them not to work with, with students with anything that's not going to be turned in for a grade. And so we have direct guidance from the computer science department that said, okay, we are, okay with that as long as the tutors guide rather than give direct answers. So I was able to incorporate that, like one exception right in with the observation standards. And then here, there are a couple, so just like with the conducting a successful session, I felt it made a lot of sense to break that one up because of the different placement of where you would be observing that. The role of the tutor and tutoring in subject areas, because the behaviors that would show mastery of these were very, very similar in that they're guiding and not lecturing, and then again, asking guiding questions. I did combine those two. So even though they are 2 different topics, since the behaviors, the observed behaviors that we were looking for were virtually identical, we did combine them into one particular category. Okay. Another thing here is I do have a couple very specific like counts and numbers, and sometimes this can be really eye-opening for the tutors to see. So we do count the amount of like air quotes lectures. So just with like the stopwatch on the app, I turn it on and turn it off if the tutor is starting to do some explanation. And I also do here, I'll show you this. I have this little check mark here, and I really just highlight it and I copy, and then I paste anytime a student a tutor asks an open-ended question. And so it's a really quick, efficient, easy way to count the number of open-ended questions. And especially for the lecture minutes, that can be really eye-opening for the students, or I'm sorry, for the tutors. Sometimes they just don't realize, which is the whole point of feedback. They just don't realize how much they're doing the explaining. So I found that those like really concrete things can be super helpful. And then I just want to point it out, I think this is the last thing to that I had here to point out, is that also, I felt that it was really important that this was, not only a resource for the tutors, as well as something that we could use to observe them. So for our learning theories in academic support, we cover multiple learning theories, but we just focused on one for the observation, which was Bloom's taxonomy. And so I just put in this little visual for them, just as a reminder of kind of what we were expecting. And again, this is another one where I combined two topics with very similar outcomes. So Bloom's taxonomy, if you're getting at those higher levels, well, that means you're asking a lot of higher level questions that get to like, how are you applying and analyzing the situation, and the same thing with our question asking strategies. So we combine those into one category. And then as you go through, here's the tutoring do's and don'ts that I showed you earlier. We've gotten kind of to the middle of the session. And then at the very end, conducting a successful session, the end part about, checking for a planning for a follow-up, checking for understanding, and concluding with a positive statement. So after the observation, we do meet with our tutors for about 10 to 15 minutes and review this. And then I don't necessarily have all of these. I have them all filled out, with where the tutor, where I felt that they did, or how the observer felt that they where they best fit as far as these categories go. And then after, I would add some comments up here, just some overall comments, as well as I could add up the points and let them know, just about where they are here. I have, we talked about this earlier, mixed feelings about the points. I think it's helpful to give them a kind of like concrete idea of where they are. Is it 100% necessary? I don't think so. I was just, modeling it based on what had been the levels of proficiency, like I said, from the University of Maryland, and that's the way they did it. And I thought, well, we'll try it out. So if I go back, can you see my slides again?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So so we found out, I felt there are things that worked really well about this. It was easily completed during the observation. The categorizing and combining things was kind of meaningful in the way that it related to training topics, which was very helpful. And our feedback session, oh, I'm so sorry, whoops. I can't click on this screen. Our feedback sessions, I thought they became a lot more productive because they were a lot more focused. And I've had a lot of really great conversations with tutors as a result. And the other thing that really helped was I started to see very clear patterns of what techniques the students, or the tutors, I'm sorry, I keep saying students, the tutors really knew well, and where are some areas that they were a little bit weaker, and I have since made adjustments in my training as a result. So for example, they were having some difficulty with, trying to get the students to summarize, which is definitely a higher level tutoring skill. And I did make some adjustments to our training where they were actually using the rubric and role plays to observe each other. And I noticed that particularly that area, it really changed. They were more consistent with being able to do some of that. There's some still room for growth. It doesn't include everything. There are some particular students who make doing all these things, a lot more, a lot less difficult than others. So it doesn't fit for that. And sometimes some of the feedback, it kind of fits more than one category, but we can still refine. But overall, I found that the focused feedback sessions with tutors have been very helpful. So yeah, that's all I have. I'm welcome to take questions, or if you want to share any takeaways or any plans you have for adjusting your observations in the future, I'd be happy to do that, to hear that.
All right, awesome. Well, we do have some questions, so I'm going to go ahead and turn to those that came in while you were speaking, then we'll get to any that folks are currently typing in. So Kendra asks, do you find it hard to balance observing between tutor physicality and content of tutoring sessions? Tutors have such different personalities, and does that ever interfere with observing?
Interesting. I guess the answer would be I haven't noticed that. I will say, as far as personalities, I definitely have some tutors who, are a little bit more chatty and tend to do more of the explaining, and some of that is reflected in, the amount of lecture time. And a lot of them don't necessarily realize it, so it is nice to see that feedback on the rubric form for them. But I haven't noticed, in using this form, it does seem to fit, many different different tutoring styles. And because it's so specific about the behaviors, I haven't had any issues with that.
All right, and Monique asks where you found, she wants to know where you found the example videos. I know those originally were from YouTube, but I wasn't sure if you had had any specific
No.
channels you recommended.
No, I know. I wish I just did some Googling and, went down a rabbit hole for a little bit and found some ones that I wanted it to be like shorter. I wanted to find some good habits and bad habits. So I just kind of watched a lot of videos to find them. So no, unfortunately, I don't have a specific channel. It was just grinding through a bunch of YouTube videos and finding ones that I thought worked well.
Gotcha.
But excellent question. I wish there were. If anyone wants to create one, there we go. Future webinar.
Annette asks, you mentioned a customization for computer science tutors. Is there any customization for writing tutors?
That's an excellent question. My center happens to be STEM. We only have STEM tutors on our staff, so that's why the problem solving and guiding. Our writing, we have a separate writing center in our particular university, and so they have their own separate processes and things that they follow. So unfortunately, that is not my field. I'll say that.
No, that's an excellent question though, and if we do have any
Yeah,
audience
it really
members
is.
who do observe writing tutors and who might have insight, you can feel free to email me, and I'm happy to pass along if that's something you're interested in sharing. Just putting this out to anyone watching. Shirley asks, are there materials or videos on starting a tutoring center to get to this point?
Oh, wow. That is an excellent question. Well, so I will say one thing that I don't know of videos, but starting a tutoring center, the ICLCA has a really great guidelines of like standards and standard practices in peer educator centers. Let me see, but that would be, if you're starting out, something to take into consideration. The ICLCA is oh my goodness, I'm going to get it right. It used to be the NCLCA, National College Learning Center Association.
International College Learning Center.
International College Learning Center Association.
So
Yes. On their website, I think it's under resources, if I remember correctly. They have just, for anyone to download standards. I think it's called like best practices guides or something like that, best practices, and that would be a fantastic place to start if you're just starting out a learning center.
Wonderful. And the next, and we love the ICLC here. I second that. They're a great resource.
Yeah, they really are.
Annette asks, do you ever feel that the tutor told ahead that they will be observed and knowing the criteria levels adjusts behavior and is not necessarily representative of usual performance? I think that's a concern with all sorts of observations.
I know.
What are
right?
what are your thoughts on providing tutors the topics and key behaviors without the levels? Oh, I think that might be a separate question.
So I try to be as transparent as possible. and I can only observe what I observe, right? So I definitely am of the belief that if you are going to use something to observe a student, they should be provided that with ahead of time. They should know, exactly what to expect. And I'm 100% sure that many of them like brush up on it right before, either one of the grads or I observe them. But I'm okay with that. That means that that student got a really great, experience. I definitely am in the room and do float around, and my graduate students do, kind of observe regularly what's going on. And so informally, they kind of know, oh, who are the tutors that, struggle with, maybe lean toward the explanation side, and who are the tutors that are always asking those great questions. And it tends to be reflected in the observation, but I'm also okay with, them adjusting, and at least that one session will have those, and maybe they'll decide after the feedback session that, hey, I should really keep doing this. So yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah, and I think that's a struggle for anybody observing any sort of
Yeah.
employee or
Yes.
evaluation.
Yeah.
Amy asks, do you have any sense or evidence that tutors were authentic when observed, or if that's a similar question, reading it out loud,
Yeah.
or if their observed sessions were much better than unobserved sessions? I think you just pretty much covered that.
Yeah. Hmm.
Jody asks, it's a great question though.
Yeah.
Jody asks, how do you assess whether tutors implement suggestions or feedback from the observation rubric? In other words, how do you close the loop?
See, that is a great question. So that's why I do try to observe every semester. Our tutors do typically stay with us, at least 2 semesters or more. So that would be something that might not happen in that semester or maybe the next. But I'm going to say, and a big and, not a but, an and. If there is a particular tutor that there are maybe on the, kind of approaching proficiency on multiple and any of the multiple of those levels, I would make sure that I would set up another observation later in the semester. I haven't had anyone, at least recently, that I have felt that was necessary, but that would be something that would kind of like, if it were needed, for the most part, the feedback, because we really do invest a lot of time in training, and following up. We tend not to have that situation, but I also know that we have the luxury of doing that. I know not all centers do, but if that were a situation that I were concerned about, I would try to follow up maybe in a few weeks, if we needed to, if there were a concern.
Yeah. Shirley asks, is there an online component for distance learning students?
So we do offer Zoom sessions for some of our tutors, or for some our students can choose if they want to meet over Zoom or have their session in person. And I have definitely observed tutors over Zoom as well, using the same rubric.
Yep, and Annette asks that as well, but she also asks, do you record sessions so tutors can go back and observe and reflect on their performance? Would a more permanent record make students feel more uncomfortable? It might, I'd say.
Yeah.
But the logistics of recording in-person sessions might be a little crazy depending on the technology available.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have not done that. I'll just say it that way. But it's something that that could be possible. We do, so in general, when we do our observations, we try to meet with the tutor within 24 hours, definitely, and ideally right after the session. And so we do have them do a little bit of reflection, like I showed you at the top of our rubric right there. So hopefully they are, doing a little bit of reflection before they see any feedback from myself or the other observers. So we tend to handle it that way. But yeah, that is an interesting question. I haven't implemented anything like, I guess, like athletes, you watch, go back and watch your performance and see what you can improve. We haven't done that yet.
Yeah. And Kendra asks, do students provide feedback on the tutors?
Yes, so our students, through our scheduling system, they are automatically, after the session, sent an email where they can provide feedback for the tutors. And I am starting to compile that. We don't get a ton. It tends to be, I'm sure you all are familiar with this phenomenon, either people who are very, very happy or not happy at all, and that tends to be very low. But students always have the opportunity to comment about their sessions if they choose to. And I am working on developing a system that I can have that available to the tutors on, so I can share that with them during their observation. I don't have a good system yet, just because there's a lot of manual stuff that would have to happen on our end. But that's something that I'm definitely considering for the future. But yes, no matter what, students do have the opportunity to give feedback on their sessions. And the questions that we have also directly correlate with the expected behaviors of the tutor. So for example, one of the questions that we ask students in that feedback, and they're all like a Likert scale, like strongly agree to, strongly disagree to strongly agree. And one of them is, I had the opportunity to practice some problems or share my knowledge or explain what I know. I forget the exact wording, but it's something like that. And that directly correlates to our expected behavior of, the tutors being a guide and the student having control of the materials and the student not lecturing. So the questions that we do ask students also relate to this.
Yeah. Those sound like really good questions. Shirley asks, do you address AI or use it in the tutoring center? That's a hot button topic.
I know, that is such a good topic. We are just dipping our toe into that. We started last semester. I think the way I really want to use it is to have the tutors role play during training with AI, like the AI pretending it's a student. So that's one way that I definitely want to use it. Right now, basically what happens in the tutoring center is largely dictated by, like, the particular policies of each department, and so in that way, with each department's concerns, and most of them, and especially because we're not a writing center, we're doing like kind of math problem solving and chemistry problem solving. We don't tend to use a lot of that yet, but is definitely something that we're investigating as we move forward. We have had a couple tutors like do a special project about AI and how it might be helpful, but we haven't yet fully, like started implementing anything in that respect quite yet. It's on our list.
I'm actually seeing a few comments, like a few recommendations that I want to read out.
Fantastic.
Kendra says she recommends the CRLA Summer Institute for starting a tutoring center.
That's really a good one. That's such a good suggestion.
And she also says we use the same form for both tutoring and writing, so we use slightly more generic moves or use, if applicable, to clarify that some moves may not be relevant to one center or the other. And Shafali does point out, then thank you for the reminder, you would need students' permission if you were recording them,
yes.
even on Zoom.
Oh gosh, of course.
So I say if that's something you're interested in at your thing, make sure that you're crossing all your I's and dotting all your T's if you do want to do recording, so that you're not on the wrong side of FERPA there. Let me see if I have any other questions here. I think that's it for right now. Mark, if there's anything I missed, but I think he's shaking his head at me from across the hall, I think we are good. So I do want to remind everybody again about our upcoming conference in October. If you're interested in joining us, we will be in Orlando, October 26th to 28th. Lots of great professional development opportunities there. And also, of course, our academia free semester trial. If you're interested in implementing a program like that, we do have surveys in academia too. So getting surveys from your students on your tutors, if that's your goal as well. And then, of course, when you leave the session, we will be redirecting you to a survey. If you are able to take that, that feedback is really, really valuable to us. And if you have any further questions, you can always send them to me, and I am happy to pass those along to Megan as well. And Megan, I want to thank you for your generosity of your time, and Megan's put her email up there as well if you want to contact her directly. Thank you for your time and your sharing your knowledge with us. It sounds like people are really excited about this topic, so we're very, very happy that you're able to join us today. Thank you again. And
thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, and thank you. Oh, Mark is showing that we do have one more question. How often has a student said they don't want to be observed, or do they feel pressure to say yes to the observations? And we'll cover that, and then any other questions, we will move on and have those sent to Megan directly.
Yes, I have yet to have a student say that. I do emphasize that we are observing, the tutor. I say like, oh, I promise, I'm just observing the, the tutor and not you. But if a student were to say that, it's totally fine, and I would just try to schedule another session. But I think someone said in their center, there are a lot of students who are more hesitant about that, and I can definitely, understand. So I can imagine that does come up.
Yep. All right, so again, if you do have any further questions, you can email those directly to Megan or send them to me. Your feedback on this session is so very much appreciated, and we thank you all for joining us on this Thursday afternoon, and we hope that you have a great rest of your week. Thank you again. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.